All right. So Mrs. Peters alluded to the fact that there are some things that, she probably would have done differently in hindsight. So I'm going to put this to Mrs. Campbell and Mrs. Little. You both have adult children. Are there things that you have done as parents where now you're looking back at it that you would have done differently? What specifically or what things do you think that, it would have been better if I had done so and so, or if I hadn't done this or said this? Think of things that you think to us as younger parents, younger in terms of maybe our age wise or younger in terms of our children's age. What are some of the things you think you could have or should have done differently that you can now pass on to us, the rest of us as younger parents, or just the parents in general, because even people with older children can also learn. So I'm putting this to Mrs. Little and Mrs. Campbell. What are some things that you would have done differently if you could?
After you, Mrs. Campbell.
You shouldn't do that to me, Well, I think I could have played a little more with the adult one. He's grown up to be very serious. He's very focused and a workaholic, and I think, yes, so.
Yes, the blinders.
And I have to be saying to him, with his daughter, spend a little more time, to play with her, because he's also so I think I could do a little better. So I'm trying to do that with this little one here now. I'm not quite sure how good I am at that. So I think just playing a little more, not being so serious in ensuring that they learn and they need to go to school and they need to pass the exams and you need to be a model citizen and so I think he's a little too stoic in his approach. So that whole idea of being able to cry and to show emotion, that kind of thing, because I think that was how I was raised too. You toughen up and so on. So now I I think looking back, I could have done a better job there.
A little bit more playful, a little more lighter. Okay.
I think he's getting away with a little too much. So my husband said, He's spoiling him, but it is being very aware of what happened with the older one and trying now to let him use his imagination and so on. So, but it's striking a balance that is key. Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Little.
All right. Thank you. I must confess, if I have to be honest, and I am going to be honest, I must confess I've had to apologize to my two older boys, especially the eldest of the three. Yes, the older of the two. I've had to apologize. And it seems as if for two particular, situations that would have happened many moons ago. And I still find that every time the conversation comes up around, they bring me back to certain things and I have to keep apologizing because they're not letting it go. And the point I'm making is when we err as parents, we hurt them in ways that it's not even easy for them to let go of, And so I definitely have some regrets, some aspect of parenting. I think I went into it too hard or too firm or too strict. And I realized a little too late that I never had to be as strict as I was, As you realize, as time would have evolved, you realize that the kind of children that you have don't necessarily need, or if you have different children, based on their personality and their behavior, you don't need that all the time, or you don't need too much of it, or you don't need to be that kind of parent. So, and that is coming from what I would have experienced as a child. So I would have adopted the kind of parenting that I would have received because I had a firm mother and a firm father. So I went into parenting with that kind of mindset. But it never had to be so. And so even as parents, we have to assess our own situation, our own context, and determine how we are going to parent and assess as we go along and make the changes so that it does not get to a point where we mar our children in certain ways. I also want to make the point that it takes a village to raise a child, yes, but I wish that in today's setting, more of the persons in the village who are aware of some of the things that are happening would speak up more, you know, would reach out to me, for example, if you, back then, if you knew that I was going off course or I was going too hard, you know, to say to me, pull me aside and say to me, little, you know, say, and straighten me out, you know, give me some hints, give me a good talking to, because we all need that from time to time. And even now, you know, the context may vary. It could be abuse that is happening in the home. It could be physically a child is getting too much flogging or too much verbal abuse. It could be that you suspect some kind of sexual abuse. Whatever the nature, we need to speak up more. Or persons who are aware or who are suspicious of certain more, because that's really what the village is for. And if you can't do it yourself, because you may not be the best person to do it, because you may not have the kind of relationship that will say you can come to me to talk to me about, find somebody who you know you can speak to so that that person can speak to me, because I might be more receptive to a particular, you know, person coming to me about something. And but we have to do more. We have to communicate more, and we have to be open to allow other persons to come into our personal space, to come into and help to influence and impact our mindset. So because ultimately, you know, when we parent, it will impact generations to come. It will impact the society that all our children are going to live into, you know? And so we might as well work together now so that we can get the result that will be satisfying futuristically.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Little. So it is driving home the point that we do our best and we should do our best, but there are times when we do things we shouldn't, or there are things that we should do that we didn't do or that we don't do. But it's not the end of the world. Recognize it, acknowledge it, and try to make amends. And so in closing, I'm going to implore us to do not substitute the gifts, the PRESENTS, for the PRESENCE. Try to be parents who provide your children with an education. Try to develop them to be well-adjusted and to be contributing members of society. And in being effective parents, you are to set rules, establish boundaries, be good communicators, also being flexible, and more importantly, ensure that you raise your children in a village that is led by the Holy Spirit, that is God-driven, that is spiritual, and an extended family who is not afraid to say, come on, man, you need to pull up your socks, or you ought not to be doing so and so, or you should be doing so and so. And I want to leave those with you, these nuggets that we took away from our panel discussion today. There is no such thing as a best practice for parenting, but there are successful things, effective things that you can do to raise good, worthwhile, contributing citizens of tomorrow. And the children that you raise today will be those people who are raising their children tomorrow. And be mindful of what the future generation will look like, because what you do is what will determine what the future looks like. So I want to thank you all, our panel members, Mrs. Campbell, Miss Yours, Pastor Baker, who had to go, Mrs. Parry, Mrs. McFarlane, Mr. Cowan, Mr. Osborne, and the other parents who chimed in, Galaxy A21S, George, Mrs. Treasure, Miss Wallace, for those of you who stayed with us until the very end. Thank you all. Remember, parenting is not a job, it's a privilege. And Mrs. Treasure said, yes, she can't wait for school open so she can get those couple of hours to cock up her foot, but the parenting never ends. You have no day off, you have no time off. You have to always show up. And parents, I wish the rest of November for you will be a beautiful parent month. And please join us later at 6 o'clock for an empowerment session. And I wish for you all a productive day, and thank you all.